Shalom and hola to nerds, movie lovers, and three possums in a trench coat. I am that nerd, Uri. I am a cosplayer, a nerd, a neurodivergent dyslexic, and just a lover of good stories. And this is going to be my new series, which I have yet to title, but basically where I am bold enough to think that strangers on the internet care to know what I have to say about movies and pop culture. This episode is going to be about Megamind and why he is dyslexic. If you haven't seen Megamind, it is a DreamWorks animated movie about a superhero, and it's very comic and was released in 2010. It was directed by Tom McGrath, and it stars Will Ferrell as Megamind, Tina Fey as Roxann Ritchi, and David Cross as Minion. Now, if you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back. And even if you don't come back, go and watch this movie. It's really good. Start out as to why I think Megamind is dyslexic. We're going to start with what is dyslexia. According to the International Dyslexic Association, dyslexia is a language-based learning disability. Dyslexia refers to a cluster of symptoms that result in people having difficulty with specifically language skills, particularly reading. Students with dyslexia often experience difficulty with both oral and written other language skills, such as writing and pronouncing words, and dyslexics each have their own collection of these attributes, and that's what makes them a dyslexic. Not every dyslexic has all of the symptoms. I am a dyslexic and I don't have all of the attributes, and Megamind doesn't have all the attributes of dyslexia, but he does have quite a few. One of the important things to understand about neurodivergency and dyslexia is that people may have one or two of these attributes or symptoms of dyslexia that they struggle with. For example, everybody may stumble over words here and there, but when it's quite frequent and when you have a lot of these attributes together, that's what makes someone dyslexic. Why Megamind was so special to me is growing up, there was zero representation for any sort of neurodivergency, dyslexia, autism, ADHD. That's just not portrayed well in media, and even if it is, it's not very good representation. What a lot of neurodivergent people do is we see people in the media and different characters, and we see how they have these clusters of attributes, and we sort of like create headcanons and to sort of make them in our minds like us. There. That's why I think Megamind is dyslexic. And one of the most obvious ways that this happens in the movie is how he pronounces words and how he gets words mixed up when he's speaking, like spider versus spider, and atrocity, and revenge versus revenge, and melancholy versus melancholy, and thinking that exit is an abbreviation for exciting, and probably the most famous one, Olo versus hello. I'll be going through different attributes of dyslexia and kind of explaining them and why they fit with Megamind. And probably the first one that you see right away in the movie is how Megamind grows up, in how Megamind is treated in the school system. What really struck me when I was first watching Megamind for the first time is how Megamind was treated at school was very much like my experience and like many other dyslexics' experience in the school system. Megamind shows up just wanting to belong and wanting to be liked by other students and by his teachers. And he tries so hard, but the way in which he learns in the way in which she gets him labeled as the black sheep by the screw-up, the bad boy, and how the system itself set him up for failure and to be the villain. We see this with Metro Man, coming in and dazzling everybody and doing things the right way and like making popcorn. And Megamind sees this and goes, hey, I can do the exact same thing, and tries to do the exact same thing, but he doesn't have laser vision to make popcorn, so he does it in his own unique way, but that way is the wrong way. And how, I'll talk about this later, but dyslexics have this out-of-the-box way of problem-solving and doing their own way of things, and how when they try to do things differently, sometimes people see that as the bad way or the wrong way, and they get punished for it, even though they're doing the exact same thing that the other students are doing. And he's kind of pushed to the side and kind of ignored by the teachers, how the teacher's there with the rest of the students teaching them the itsy bitsy spider, while Megamind is incredibly intelligent. That's one thing I love about him, is how smart he is, because at a very young age he's learned how to hydrate and rehydrate objects, and how even though dyslexics aren't more or less intelligent than the rest of the population, they can be treated as not intelligent because they don't read well. And they're just labeled as stupid. And that one scene of Megamind being quite intelligent and just sort of learning things on his own while everyone else ignored him and told him what he was doing was wrong really reminded me of an experience I had, and how I was told I was the screw-up and the black sheep because I didn't read and write as well as the other students. But I remember when we were playing with magnets and how the teacher explained us that, there's a positive side and a negative side, and how you can't have two positive meet. They'll repel each other, but you can have positive and negative meet. And how all of the students just wanted to play with the magnets, but I sort of looked at it and went, well, drawing a plus and a minus on a piece of metal doesn't make metal come together or repel each other, so what's going on? And asking that question and wanting to know basically the science behind that as a young third grader, and being told that that was wrong and that I shouldn't be asking those questions. But because no one else was asking those questions, they just wanted to play with the magnets. And how my intelligence was basically villainized because I couldn't do things the same way that everyone else could. He tries so hard, and he eventually just he gets so tired of trying and trying and trying that he eventually just says, no matter how hard I try, I always end up being the last one picked, the screw-up, the black sheep, the bad boy. Was this my destiny? Maybe it was. Being bad was the one thing that I am good at. Then it hit me. If I was the bad guy, then I was going to be the baddest boy of them all. And how constantly being told that you're bad, screw up, the black sheep, the bad boy, these are common titles and labels that get put on people with dyslexia. And to a certain degree, it just leads up to, if this is who I am. And gets us stuck in this, gets a lot of dyslexics stuck in the cycle. Another attribute of dyslexia is that you can't grow out of dyslexia. You can develop coping mechanisms, so it's easier. You can learn to read and write. I learned how to read and write, but the attributes are still there. And sometimes people can either get diagnosed late in life, or they get misdiagnosed when they're young. But there's no growing out of dyslexia. That's a myth. And we see this again in Megamind when he becomes an adult and he still has trouble speaking. He still struggles with the word school and atrocity. And how he's treated hasn't really changed either. Again, Metro Man is still kind of a jerk to Megamind and constantly corrects him on his pronunciations of words and sort of puts him down behind that. And another thing that dyslexics constantly struggle with is people constantly correcting them and trying to get them to do things the right way and say things the right way. And Minion does this sometimes, but it's just more of a kinder way of doing it. Metro Man does it in kind of a snarky way of, it's not Metrocity, it's Metro City, and kind of snappy at him. And how, as a kid, I struggled to read out loud, and especially as an adult, I struggled to read out loud, because some people, they mean well, but they, correct me in a way that feels very publicly shaming, or they snap at me and don't fully understand, and a lot of dyslexics struggle with that, and seeing that again in media, it really validated me as a child. Like I said earlier, dyslexics have excellent problem-solving skills. Dyslexics might struggle with reading department, but when it comes to problem-solving, they figure out complex problems that other people struggle to find, and rather than being a sequential thinker, going from one idea to the next, an attribute of dyslexia is that they can take the environment and all of these different problems and ideas and wants. This is why we see so many dyslexics who are actually entrepreneurs. And we also see this with Megamind, how he basically built his own career out of being a supervillain. He basically created a career that never existed and created one in order to survive. A study in 2003 had 300 business leaders and found that 40% of them had attributes of dyslexia. And a couple of these studies have implicated that dyslexics are 4 times more prevalent to become successful entrepreneurs than the general population based on their creativity and their out-of-box thinking and how they choose to juggle multiple problems and find a solution. And we see this with Megamind when he's a student and playing dodgeball, how he comes up with one helmet to solve a lot of his problems with dodgeball, that this helmet not only blocks the balls from hitting him, but also launches them back at his fellow classmates. How, when we first meet him as an adult, he is planning both an escape from prison, he's planning Roxann's kidnapping, he's planning how to kill Metro Man, and all of these complex plans he managed to balance and just end up actually succeeding in doing. Another attribute that I've been talking about is how dyslexics are often labeled as out-of-the-box thinkers and how they can come up with unorthodox ideas and that are fresh and new and just different than what's expected. Some of Megamind's plans and how he created the prison for Roxann and how many creative ideas he found to capture her and keep her contained between alligators, machine guns, drills, saws, a boot-kicking machine, I don't know what this is, flamethrowers, and just a spider and just rolling with what this spider could be. And also his plans that he never actually got to do, fights that he wanted to do with Metro Man. The illiteracy beam, the typhoon cheese, the robot sheep, the reset button. Also, another reason I think Megamind is dyslexic is I think only a dyslexic could come up with a illiteracy beam as a weapon against people, because dyslexics are also abstract thinkers. It turns out that Dyslexic people can comprehend abstract ideas. They're good with philosophy, or some of them are good with philosophy. They understand things that are not tangible. Many of these things are innate human qualities such as bravery, love, and deception. A very good example of this is the argument between Megamind and Metro Man, and them trying to quantify this abstract idea of justice and evil and how you can't trap justice. And Megamind uses his abstract thinking to connect it to something tangible, how justice is like a metal that can be melted down in the heat of revenge, how it can be reheated in the microwave of evilness. Taking this very abstract idea of justice and making metaphors of how it fits into something very tangible like microwaves and metal and food. For example of his very abstract thinking is when he's having this conversation with this dead-eyed plastic desk toy. I don't know what that's called. Watching this little birdie go up and down and how he's able to abstractly think about how that's a metaphor for currently how he's thinking that this little birdie's always thirsty, never satisfied, doesn't really have a purpose, but just has this vacuum that causes it to go up and down, and how that kind of applies to how he's feeling very empty and just sort of going through the motions. Another attribute of dyslexia that Megamind has is his ability to acutely analyze stories and how they're told and how he's able to dissect stories. And how dyslexics may struggle with reading and writing. Dyslexics can still analyze stories of what they're being told, or movies or audiobooks, or even reading a book themselves, because they have very strong spoken language and comprehension. Because many dyslexics have strong spoken language comprehension abilities, they can understand plot and story, and many can keep track of all of the characters and plot twists better than some non-dyslexics. This is where the movie gets very self-aware of that it's a superhero movie, and how Megamind realizes that he's a villain and how villains interact in the story, and that villains and heroes are yin and yang, bullfighter and bull, and how without a hero to fight, a villain has no purpose. One of the themes that gets repeated over and over in the movie is that if there is evil, good will rise up to fight it. How Megamind is able to take the attributes, characteristics of a superhero, that they have to be strong, that they have to be brave, that they have to have a certain DNA, and basically build himself his own superhero. Granted, he makes a very poor choice of... He chooses someone who's not brave, and the exact opposite of what he intended to go for. Overall, dyslexics are these people that struggle with language and reading and writing and language comprehension, and especially written comprehension, but have these really big ideas, and these can be out of these box thinkers. And that's very much who Metro Man is. He has these big ideas, and he's comes up with these crazy out of the box ideas and plans and schemes, but he struggles with language. Megamind also has these little attributes that are also aspects of dyslexia. Dyslexics can be these big ideas thinkers and incredibly intelligent, but they can also struggle with very mundane tasks and have executive dysfunction of how to clean up basic messes and often have messy rooms and backpacks and desks and cars. When Megamind's a kid, you can see in his prison cell he has like paper scattered all across his room with like drawings and schemes that he has. And if you look at his lair, it's just filled with boxes, and when he's giving his plan of how to create his own superhero to fight him, his plan is like scattered all across. He has to use ladders and roll across the room and go up and down in order to collect all of his thoughts he's had scattered all over the place in this giant mess. And he's writing with a jelly donut, probably because he can't find a pen. How he just has chaos and a messy room. That's just a minor thing. Another attribute of dyslexia may be having a short-term memory. Dyslexics can often seem to have a short-term memory problem and struggle remembering relevant information without a significant reminder of it, and how he forgot where he parked his car, his invisible car, and he just couldn't find his car because he didn't have a significant way to remember where it was. And how often, like, I have to have my keys in very particular spots, otherwise I will be tearing the entire house apart because I cannot find my keys because it's not in that one specific location of, like, where are my car keys. And as an adult watching Megamind and not being able to find something important such as car. Yet another attribute of dyslexia can be coordination problems. Some dyslexics can have struggles with physical issues such as basic clumsiness or pronunciation of words and getting the words right. Sometimes this is called dyspraxia. And often the times when Megamind's running away from things, he's constantly tripping over things. There's a point where he's riding a bike and he just struggles with his balance on the bike. When he's arguing with Minion and they're running around, he's like tripping over his own invisible car. When they're in Metro Man's lair and Roxann finds this great huge discovery in Megamind, runs over and basically trips over himself in order to find what Roxann is looking at. That's another reason why I like Megamind so much. A lot of people, dyslexic or not, are just clumsy and like, that's okay, and it's really cute and fun with him. Another fun little detail about the movie Megamind is one of his gadgets, the watch that can make you look like different people, his hologram watch. A hologram watch is just a really cool gadget that's an essential part of the entire movie. If he didn't have that watch, the entire movie would just sort of like fall apart. Like, he'd never be able to escape out of prison. He'd never actually like get to know Roxann. He'd never be able to trick Titan into thinking he was Metro Man. Having a watch and its purpose is not actually to tell time, but to do something creative and out of the box. It reminds me of how many dyslexics, they struggle with being able to tell time with a clock that has hands. And just having that tiny little detail, I think it's really kind of cute. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is how Megamind just wants to be viewed as normal, as not the screw-up or the bad guy, but just as a normal person, and like be treated with respect. And how, as a kid, that's kind of all I wanted. Was I didn't want to be just the dyslexic, the screw-up, the bad kid, the stupid kid. I just wanted to be a normal kid, and I just wanted positive feedback. And how when Megamind finally gets positive feedback, he freaks out because he doesn't know what it is. And how a lot of the times dyslexics, they're trying so hard, but they're just constantly told that you just need to try harder, and no one actually like sees how hard they're trying. They just want that positive affirmation of, yeah, you're trying really hard. And it's okay. And I see that, and that is amazing that you're trying so hard. Often when he feels like he has to pretend to be someone else, he has to pretend to be someone else in order to have a relationship with Roxann. He has to pretend that he's Metro Man in order to save the city. And how that kind of, this pretend of like desperation of trying to be like everyone else and like the good person, the hero, is kind of where he stumbles in the finale. How it's his struggle with language that gets him caught in the end of pretending to be Metro Man, and how he screws up the mispronunciation of Metro City, calling it Metrosity, and that's what tips Titan off that he's pretending to be someone that he's not. How he defeats Titan by using his gifts. How he's used his struggles of failing over and over and over again as a way to figure out who he is and learn from that and be able to problem solve better. And how he's dealing with a lot of these different powers of like, how does he keep Roxann safe? How does he defeat Titan? How do you find the depowering gun that he lost? His solution to everything is to understand the out-of-the-box thinking of, as he's falling to his death, he gets the crazy idea to basically dehydrate himself, drop himself into water, which would rehydrate him. He'd be able to catch the gun and then depower Titan and turn him back into Hal. When he does this, he still embraces fully who he is, that his creativity, and came up with this crazy out-of-the-box idea of how to solve the problem. And he isn't ashamed of his language problem. He pops back up and he says, "Olo!" and depowers him, and like embracing all of who he is. And when he fully embraces who he is, that's when he becomes a hero, and that people stop viewing him as the villain and learn to accept him as who he is, both as this crazy out-of-the-box thinker who struggles with language, and he also learns that he's not the screw-up, not the failure, and not the bad guy. He can actually be a good person. So that is why I think Megamind is a dyslexic, and my thoughts on all of this. And if you're still watching, thank you so much for watching. What are your thoughts? Do you think I'm absolutely crazy? I will be putting down resources and links to dyslexia and what I've been talking about, and about Megamind. You can check those out, and just, what are your guys' thoughts on all of this? Thank you so much for watching. If you want to subscribe and want to hear more of my crazy theories and ideas, this is where you find them. You can also find me on my other social media links. Yeah, that'll be all for today, guys.